And almost from the beginning, I encountered the struggle with purity, and not just in young men, but with all people who live in the world of the internet and the availability of such a thing as at an instant in their lives. These children, these young people have been thrown into the world in the same way that young men were thrown into the battles of the wars of other people. I said, we really need to put together something in order to equip people with a prayerful structure to confront this reality. I started exploring what this Angelic Warfare Confraternity is about.
And it has deep roots in our history, doesn't it?
Deep roots.
Can you rewind back to the history of it and how it all began with St. Thomas? Because this is a fascinating story.
It is a fascinating, well, like why St. Thomas? Wasn't he just a theologian? Tradition is that angels arrived and gave him a girdle to wrap around his waist that he would wear for the rest of his life to protect his purity. This confraternity is a way of uniting together to pray daily certain prayers that will equip them and offered not only for yourself, but for others in support of the living in chastity. I'll tell you, it works.
Really?
It's just so amazingly powerful.
Father Penner, welcome back.
Oh, I always like being here. I don't know if you always like having me here. I talk so much, but it's just such a blessing, and through you to be with the people that share in this ministry and find, I know, great strength and support, leading us to the heart of Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for Ken and all the work that he and Janelle do.
Well, that's why I brought you on, so you can thank us, right?
Yes, exactly.
But thank you.
I'll get the money as I leave later.
We appreciate your presence. And I think what you have to share today is very, very important. It's the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. This is something I'd never heard of before until Matthew brought it up to me and said, you should have Father Penner to come in and talk about this. And so I'm coming in kind of ignorant of this. I did a little bit of research before you came. Can you share with us first how you got involved with the Angelic Warfare Confraternity?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it arose out of my return, not really, my return to Saskatoon to become something I'd never been before. In my long years as a priest, I'd never been a pastor. These have been the most wonderful years of my priesthood, to be pastor at the Co-Cathedral here in Saskatoon. And part of that ministry, in fact, I think an essential thing in my life is hearing confessions. The cathedral is right downtown. We have a long history of being a place in which people constantly come for confessions.
Yes.
And almost from the beginning, I encountered the struggle with purity, especially in young men, but also with young women. And then not just in young men, but with all men. In fact, with many people who live in the world of the internet and the availability of such a thing as at an instant in their lives, and how distressed they were and how destructive it was in their lives and in the lives of their families. You know, young men, I realized these young men are going to be marrying my nieces, and they have been misshapen by this very artificial and alienating, we can get into that, experience of their own sexuality. The second thing that I saw, I remember having a younger person come in and was really quite young, like just a few years over 10, being so upset by what he'd seen. Mm-hmm. And it clearly came to me this insight that, this is a battle. This is a war. And the devil, the accuser who wants us to believe his lies that we're unloved, unlovable, and unloving, he's sharpened his wits. Ever since the Protestant Reformation in the West, a century has begun with a war. Terrible wars. 15th century, the wars of religion. 16th century, the 30 Years' War, when a third to a half of Europe was killed. 1614 to 1644. Remember those dates. The next century, the battles of the Spanish and French conquests, and it spilled over into the New World. All the French Indian Wars, everything that we've known here. In the 18th century, Napoleon, who was, if you will, the Hitler of 19th century, because he sacrificed millions of people to his expansionistic desires. And then from 1914 to 1944 in Europe, the Second World War, terrible butchery. And in all of those, the flower of manhood was destroyed. Who knows who it was that perished in the bloodbaths that increased in intensity in that time? Well, in this century, the devil has figured out, don't kill the young men, corrupt them. Attack their very manhood. Attack their very integrated holiness and wholeness. Deflect and dissipate their sexual energy, the energy that is the fire for lovemaking in the world, for creating, giving to men passion to build, and also women. Feminism came to a point where it said, well, the response to is that women should be able to make. And all of this just flooded in a way that I hadn't really seen. And it came to me in the confessional. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, I remember once being at a workshop with educational developers in Alberta. And we were, because the bishops had asked me to do some work with with issues around what they called gay-straight alliances and things like that, and clubs that were doing that. And I brought up the discussion. There were people of various perspectives on this provincial conversation. I brought up, I said, one thing that unites all these kids is that they all have to deal with, and it's really doing something to their whole brains and their bodies. And one of the other persons, who's now become a senator in Canada, said, yes, we have to teach children how to use properly. Okay, that cannot be the response of the church to this reality. Neither can it be pure condemnation and guilt-making. These children, these young people, have been thrown into the world in the same way that young men were thrown into the battles of the wars of other people and being used. And it's all about money. Is the place that you go into Amazon, do shopping. The first people that learned how to use a credit card to make money on the internet were the makes more money than all of football, all this professional sports and Hollywood combined.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the reality. And I meet it not in this abstract way, but in the face and the voice of a person whose marriage is going in a bad place because someone told them that they have to see their wife as their accountability partner, and all kinds of things blow up in all of that. And they struggle because it's an addiction. Not only, it's a kind of an addiction, it's a spiritual malaise. All right. How do I respond? I struggled with this. How do I respond with integrity? So I studied it because I like studying, and I read all kinds of journals and ways of approaching it. And yet I found in my conversations with folks that even though I would suggest certain kind of things to read and practices to go through, it wasn't getting anywhere near. And it came to me, I am a priest of God's holy church. This is a power of the principalities and the powers of heaven. This has to be addressed in prayer. So I talked to my dear friend who's a Capuchin in the United States, who's working as a formator in a seminary right now. And I said, we really need to put together something in order to equip people with a prayerful structure to confront this reality. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, let's think about it. And then he got back to me. He said, have you ever heard of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity? I said, like you? No. We looked. Why reinvent the wheel? And so I started exploring what this Angelic Warfare Confraternity is about.
And it has deep roots in our history, doesn't it?
Deep roots. First of all, I'm wearing the wrong cassock. I should be wearing a Dominican habit. because the Angelic Warfare Confraternity of St. Thomas is a gift and a ministry entrusted by our Lord, I believe, to the Dominican Order. And for over 350 years, it has been an association of people who, through the intercession of St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, who in his own journey of life faced some very severe temptations against purity and was aided in that by the presence of angels, to turn to and find that gift of praying together under the inspiration of St. Thomas and of the angelic presence and centrally of the Blessed Virgin Mary, to be able to have a discipline and a practice of prayer that has not only produced saints, but has, like Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati was a member of the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. So reading this, I said, oh my goodness, I'd never heard of this. What a gift. What's it about? So I wrote to the Dominican community because it is entrusted to them, and you cannot enroll anybody in this society if you are not a Dominican priest or commissioned by the person entrusted for the guidance of the confraternity here in this province, in this area of the church. And so I sought their permission to become someone who could welcome people and receive people into the confraternity. And they granted it to me. So we began it. And I'll tell you, it was amazing to see people of all different ages come. The first time that I said, we're going to have this enrollment. Now you have to pray about it because it's a real commitment. This isn't just something that you do on a spur of the moment.
Yeah.
You pray about it and then you come forward.
Beautiful.
And we've had, now we're way over 100 people. Like there were 100 people the first day, and it's just growing all the time.
So wonderful. Now, okay, before we talk about really what's happening right now, can you rewind back to the history of it and how it all began with St. Thomas? Because this is a fascinating
It is
story.
a fascinating, well, like why St. Thomas? Wasn't he just a theologian, like the greatest theologian of the church?
Yeah.
Yes, but he was also a Southern Italian. And the youngest member of a minor nobility, but noble family nonetheless in southern Italy. And so, I mean, his parents, especially his mama, had big plans for this young man. Plans, since he was the youngest, he wasn't going to inherit any of the land. How could he help the family? Well, he wanted to become a priest. So let's make him an abbot. We'll find a monastery nearby, and there was one that had all kinds of resources. We'll put him in there and we'll get them to elect him abbot because they had, that kind of pressure. Things were united. And he can help advance our family. Problem. He met this group of bums, literally mendicants. The word mendicant means beggar and, someone who's asking for alms, and who were called the Dominicans, who were formed at this time by St. Dominic, and with the Franciscans of the first orders of itinerant preachers. And he was captivated by them. He said, Lord, this is where you're calling me. Now, remember, we're dealing with one of the most amazing minds that God has ever incarnated in the world, that God has ever allowed to flourish. And so his pet family were utterly upset. Here's this guy. It's like, he's joined a cult, we would say nowadays, right? We've got our plans. It's all nice and set. And off he goes to these new people who are nothing. They're in the street. They're begging.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dominicans weren't like settled in big houses yet at all this time, as they were rapidly to become to facilitate their work. And so what did they do? They sent the brothers out to beat up the Dominicans that he was with, throw him on a horseback, and take him back to Aquino. Because he's from Aquinas, is from the town of Aquino, where they locked him in a room till he would come to his senses. And, they tried not giving him food and all the rest of it. And Mama said, I know how I'm going to do this. This is weird. Okay? But remember, Italian mamas, when they want to get their way, they know how to get their way. Mama went and hired a prostitute and sent the prostitute in to tempt Thomas. Her son. I know. Well, heck, heck, if we let our kids watch too much of the internet, we're doing the same dang thing. You know? We want them to follow our sorts of ways. Anyway, I shouldn't be. But, okay, that's the story. In this prostitute goes, Thomas takes a look at her. What are you going to do? Thomas, this studious kid, grabs the brand from the fire and chases her out and makes a big sign of the cross on the wall out of the blackened end and starts praying. And tradition is that angels arrived, and 2 angels, and gave him a girdle to wrap around his waist that he would wear for the rest of his life to protect his purity. That girdle you can still visit it's in Naples, I think. Yeah, I think that's where I saw it. Get old, everything mushes together. Italy's so beautiful. And so that's why the Dominicans then, when they began to see what is always a great challenge, the sin of the young is usually to do with things in their sexual and relational developments. And not to just sort of say, oh, well, you're a kid, you'll grow out of it. No, there's a great call to holiness, a great call to purity. And we have many saints who show us that. And it's a time in which the foundations of one's life are really, really set. So they began this devotion. And the devotion itself reflects the experience of how we can be clothed and helped by angels, as was St. Thomas Aquinas, in our struggle to be pure. Now, purity of heart for the Christian, as Jesus says in the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. It's not about sex. In the first case, that's a kind of Victorian thing. To be pure is something to do with sexual purity. It does, but that's not what purity of the heart really means. It's a consequence. Purity of the heart means being singularly focused on Jesus, on God, seeing God in and above and through all things. That's purity of the heart. And we're called to live that purity. Because if we do, then we literally see God.
Right.
In the people we meet, in the food that we partake in the creation that's around us, in the words that we read, in our own abilities to share the word. We shall see God, and we shall see, as my mom right now, as her life's journey is coming, to its natural conclusion, said to me when I asked her, what is heaven, Mom? She said, oh, the face of God, the face of Jesus. So, how do we set our young people, and not only our young people, but our old people, on that path of purity of heart?
We'll get back to the conversation in just a second, but a question for you. If you've been blessed by this video, you could help us out in a couple of very simple ways. Firstly, like and share this video. YouTube is going to see that and then suggest this message out to a larger audience. So that's something simple you could do. Secondly, could you pray for us? We're always in need of grace, and we'd greatly appreciate your prayers. And thirdly, if it is possible, consider supporting our mission at canonjanelle.com. Your support allows us to continue producing videos just like the one you're watching. So thank you so much for the consideration. Now back to the conversation.
So how do we set our young people, and not only our young people, but our old people, on that path of purity of heart? You can't do it alone. When you're left alone with your phone and your own resources, and it's dark at night, you're hooped. You're really hooped. But if you have a community that prays with and for you, and not only with and for you that you belong to, that you know you are part of, a fraternity of people, then you have a kind of a power.
Now, it's the confraternity. This is kind of a phrase that maybe some people are unaware of. There's other confraternities within the church, but would it be correct to describe it as like a lack of a better word, a fellowship, a community of people that work towards a certain good, united in that focus under the patronage of a saint, or in this case, a saint and the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the
angels.
Oh, and in this case, particularly, that good we're towards is purity. Purity,
single-minded focus on God and God's will for our bodies, and for our relationships as people, especially in the face of the challenges that come from the original wound, which is sex. What? People, I love knowing the history of words because all the stories are in there. The word sex. I ask people, what does it mean? You're talking about it. You think about it all the time. What does it mean? What's the word? Have you ever heard you've heard the word sicarii in Latin? There was a guy named Judas of the Sicarii, Judas Iscariot. What is Iscariot? Well, there are several different scholarly approaches, but the one I kind of like, I think it's most plausible, is that the Sicarii were people who had knives, who were great assassins, who would bump off Romans, and those who collaborated by coming up. Okay, Judas of the knife. The knife, Sicarii, is from the same Latin word as sex. It means to cut, to wound. The original human wound is that man and woman are created, but they're cut. They're divided. They need complementarity. There's a wound. There's an openness. And the devil likes putting all kinds of salt in that and making that wound painful. And our kids come wounded, many of them. Mm-hmm. And so you can't dump on them. Don't make them feel bad and guilty. Just because one of the things that people always say, I got over Catholic guilt. I have a whole other story about that. Guilt is actually a good thing if it's the word of your conscience saying, this is not what I was created for. That's a real gift that some people just don't have. So the confraternity then, there is, as you said, an organization within the church that has ecclesial approbation. The church acknowledges it as not just sort of a loosey-goosey, moving kind of club. Yeah, it's not a club. It's a confraternity of people who gather together to pray, to share their resources for a specific thing. And there are, and have been, many, many ways in which lay people, particularly, who are in the world, can be associated with a particular mission and work and good of the church. So this confraternity is a way of uniting primarily young people who have the most intense encounter with this, but not just young people, other people, to join together to pray daily certain prayers that will equip them and offered for them, not only for yourself, but for others, in support of the living in chastity, a chaste life, a life in which all the dimensions and energies of your body and your mind are being able to be given over to purity of heart, focusing on the Lord. Thomas Aquinas, who is the great theologian, like if there's such a thing as a psychologist, his understanding of the human person is incredibly rich. And that's why the 14 prayers that we meditate upon every day, we can now get into what it is, are shaped by Thomas Aquinas's understanding of what it means to be a human being. And so we literally, if you will, with the prayer of the Hail Mary and the Word of God, anoint, if I could use that word, in prayer, all those dimensions of our bodies and our minds that are required for us to live chaste lives.
Wow. Okay. So now they've heard their history. They've heard the connection to St. Thomas Aquinas. How does somebody join the confraternity? What are the steps and what are the requirements or commitments of the members?
Very good. So there is produced here this beautiful little pamphlet that is got the 15 Hail Marys with petitions. I said 14, 15. Why would I say 14? Getting old. I love doing it and and I finally come to the point now, after all these years, of being able to just get them without having to look at them. And it just sort of follows all the way through. Of these prayers, you take a look at it, find it. You can find it online. You just type in Angelic Warfare Confraternity, and there are the prayers. And you do a discernment. Can I pray this daily?
I'm going to jump in. So we're going to make a video highlighting these prayers, so it'll be a resource for people to have. So
wonderful. Praise God.
You keep on going now.
Okay. So now, and we're human beings, right? So we don't, like, if you're looking, I'm not going to do this. Well, there are shortened forms.
Long form,
Right, Matthew?
long form, short form.
Long form, short form.
Okay.
My practice is sometimes on feast days I'll do the long form. I like doing the long form a lot, but use a minimal of the short form. Also, to wear either the girdle, this cord, which is blessed, wear it around your body all the time. And I'll tell you, when you're a chunko like me, you always remember that that's on you. Okay, the young guys, I guess it would, and gals, it might fall off. But this is my gauge for if I'm putting on weight. If the cord is cutting into me, it's not right now. But it's as I following St. Thomas Aquinas, and it's a good physical reminder of this, or to wear the medallion that comes of the Angelic Warfare. Okay. This, for example, is the chaplet with the 15. It allows you, so that's why I get to, it used to be I'd get to the end just doing the, which one did I miss? But actually you find as you pray these, which you are asked to do every day, that as you pray these, it really is this anointing of all of the dimensions which I hope you will going to show. So you come. The requirement is for you to come and be special enrolled. There's a ceremony before a person who is a Dominican priest or a priest who has been commissioned by the Dominican fathers to receive you into the community. You register with it. Your name is put in the register that is kept, in this case in Washington, with all the members of this confraternity, and you promise to pray in support of them and for yourself and for the world this prayer. Okay. And you wear either to wear the cord or to wear the medallion around your neck.
Okay, can I summarize then? So first, one, you have to see this is something you want, but to practical steps, enroll in somebody who has had the proper authority to enroll you, Dominican or someone who's, what do you call it, commissioned?
Yeah, someone who's commissioned.
Number two, you pray those prayers, either the long form or the short form. And number three, there's a commitment to wear the girdle or the medal, and the medal can be around
your neck. Yes.
It can be.
I had it, but I must have left it out in the car. I don't wear the medal. I keep the girdle.
Okay. Kind of those three things. Am I missing something?
No, those things. And it's just to be, and if you can, to come to the, when there are, and I'm always trying to find moments of doing this, when there are sort of opportunities to come and reflect as the confraternity gathers.
Oh, so there's
some fall, but we tend to be, and it's good to do that, to be renewed in it, because sometimes people fall out of the habit. Whoosh, back to confession, get it going. I'll tell you, it works. The testimony of people, if they are faithful to it.
Really?
It's just so amazingly powerful, because Mary is powerful. And it also, I think, reorients you pray about your imagination and the dreams and the things that come in your body and your senses, and it leads you all the way through to our essential longing as wounded people for our love of the Lord, a love that is selfless. It leads you very simply through that, and it gives to a person the habit of undercutting what for many people when it comes, particularly, I know this arose because of, but it's about all kinds of things. For couples enroll in this as they're preparing for marriage, and there's a struggle. How do you want to be close to the other person?
That's a natural thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you, without saying, you never want a couple to experience that which is natural and beautiful and given by God as something horrible that we have to avoid. It's all about sin. You don't want them, neither do you want, it doesn't matter, There's a richness. There's the fullness of truth when we experience that in God. And this is a wonderful way of actually shaping the habit of one's thinking. Psychologists, I've been reading that, and psychiatrists who study the mind, I've been reading about how it affects people, really say that, in order to get over that, if you've got this kind of addiction where it just becomes a habit, some people I've talked to, some priests or educators say that it's a process addiction, that you just get caught in, it's like playing a video game. And men love visual things. And so it's really effective for men. And it becomes a habit, and it becomes a way of, well, I think a lot of times the internet is for us a sin of gluttony. We want more knowledge. We want more things. We just eat. And when you're in that world, well, it just, if you can go for 2, some say 2 or some say 3 weeks, without any kind of stimulation of your sexual powers, with staying away from all of that, your mind can be reset. Okay, that's really hard. That's hard to do for in this world. Where do you go?
Right.
I mean, when I was a kid, you had to go to the store, and so there was a great barrier. Yeah, or if you found it in somewhere, and kids, but even then, kids would bring it to school. Oh, look at this, all the rest of it. And it really has an effect. You get those images in your mind. But there is a way of the body, empowered by the Spirit, to overcome this. And these prayers, when you say them, they really are powerful.
Well, the phrase here, we have the Angelic Warfare Confraternity. It suggests a real battle.
Yes.
Do you find that this battle is not simply at the natural level, but we're talking about diabolical warfare here, demons that are involved, much more than simply at the natural level?
Oh, absolutely. As I said at the beginning, this is the new way in which the evil one is waging war on the church and on humanity, which he hates. It's to corrupt and disincarnate people. The whole thing of is a real dehumanization of the other. It reduces them to pixels that you can employ for your own enjoyment. And I'll tell you, as Father Rippinger often says, the emotions can be the playground of the devil, right? And there's nothing more, one of the most powerful emotions in our lives is that of our sexual impulses. And even more, in a culture in which the religion of the culture is that of sex, sexual identity. People define themselves about who they have a sexual attraction to. Okay, that seems a rather truncated sort of way of understanding the complexity of people. Well, we've come into an understanding of the multiple experience of what it means to be a human, but you can't be reductive in all of this. And that divides people. And wherever there's a division of a person from reality, there is the devil. Because that's what the name devil means. Diabole, casting into, dividing and broken. And, the young men and young women that come in that are faced with this kind of reality, fly. I always think that flies are the souls of the damned, or maybe someone in purgatory. When they bug you at Mass, it's because they didn't go to Mass enough. See, look at here. Maybe they didn't do enough study. No, it's autumn in Saskatchewan. In any case, the reality is that this is a great place for the devil to get people out of kilter. And the young men and women that come in, they're not there out of guilt. They know that when there is, if you will, sexual impurity, that means living your sexuality in an ungodly way, in a non-life-giving way, in the way that God gave it to us, that they're out of kilter. And it can become also a chain. Often people say, okay, I've fallen once, so I'm in mortal sin. Let me do it again and again and again. It just becomes a cascade. And that's the devil saying to people, see, you are that. So just go for it. And then they have this sort of idea of in and out of something. Go to confession, yes. But if you're not, well, this is a whole other thing about confession, about how you come regularly. The thing is to develop the tools of the warfare that many, many people are facing in a real powerful way of having their own relationship with God and themselves undone by the artificial technology of the world, which turns everybody into voyeurs. You look at a screen at a certain level, you're a voyeur. What do I mean? A voyeur is someone who looks at something that they have no right to look at. You could be a voyeur in watching the news. It can become a... What do I mean? Is writing, the word means writing things wrong. It's reducing the dimensions of the human person to pieces that are there for your own pleasure. Well, when you start listening to the news and all of a sudden it allows you to become angry, upset, and but who cares if you're angry and upset about what you see? Who cares? That's a feeling for you that you get to indulge in. And it's something about you. And people love drama. And people love feeling things. No. That's why you should do what my mom does. When you watch television and the news, you have the rosary. And something goes wrong, and you're looking at someone's accident and heartbreak, you pray the rosary for them. And the same thing goes with Our Lady and the angels and St. Thomas, allowing you to enter into this very complex and easily addicting world with power and tools. It's a warfare.
Hopefully this gives some people some hope, right?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
How long does it take to do the long prayers?
Oh, Matthew, how long does it take to do yours? I often, for me, it takes about 10 minutes.
And the short form?
Oh, about 5 minutes.
Okay, so we're not talking about like a massive commitment in terms of time, right?
No. And the thing about the structure is brilliant because it goes through all the different dimensions. And I hope you'll explore it. And one of the things in the long form, it has something that's really powerful. Not only the Hail Mary, but the Word of God. Saint Evagrius of Pontus, who was one of the great early church desert fathers, wrote a book called Antiretikos, talking back, lipping off the demons. And it's a beautiful book that I often use in the confessional. So if you're being attacked by the demon of anger at your brother because of something that happened in the past, how do you talk back to that demon or those evil thoughts? With the Word of God. And he gives you a line from Scripture. That comes, here's the word that you use back. And that's what you find in these prayers too. Okay. So it's really good to do the long form. It doesn't take much more.
Okay.
It might take 15 minutes.
Okay. Is there any final word you want to give? Or
No, I thank God for the gift that this has come into my ministry, into my own life personally, and into the work that I do. And I'm very thankful that you've given me the chance. And I hope that people will find that as a great way of being able to pray for one another, especially our children.
Yeah.
Okay? And for our young people to find the kind of freedom to be able to know that they are not alone and that the Lord is with them in this mess.
Yes.
And also, Mary, she can't be beaten.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.